The ice crystals had been forming patterns on the observation window for 3 centuries, delicate fractals that no one had seen until today. Raylan pressed his hand against the cold glass and felt nothing but the weight of his ambition. Behind him, the cryogenic chamber hummed with ancient power, systems that predated his entire civilization still functioning perfectly after 800 years of silence. "Administrator, the Council has sent another message," his assistant Torin said quietly. "They're ordering you to stop the awakening procedure." Raylan didn't turn around. His reflection in the frosted glass showed a young Caldari male, barely into his 4th decade, with the silver markings of political achievement running down his neck. Those markings had cost him everything to earn, and he wouldn't surrender his greatest discovery to fearful old cowards. "Tell the Council their warnings are based on mythology, not facts," Raylan replied. "Our ancestors were primitive. They didn't understand what they found here." The chamber facility stretched out before him, a massive complex built into the frozen moon of Frost Haven. 12,000 cryogenic pods lined the walls in perfect rows, each one containing a human from an era so distant that the Caldari hadn't even developed space flight yet. When Raylan's exploration teams first discovered this place, they'd found something that changed everything he believed about galactic history. The humans had been here first. Every star system the Caldari Dominion controlled, every station they'd built, every piece of territory they claimed as their ancestral right. All of it had belonged to humanity. The evidence was everywhere once you knew to look for it. Ancient human writing on forgotten satellites, genetic markers in the soil of colony worlds, architectural foundations beneath Caldari cities. The humans had ruled 47 star systems before vanishing into their long sleep. "The pod is ready," Torin announced, his voice shaking slightly. "Subject designation, Dr. Ivy Cross, xenobiologist, age 34 at time of stasis." Raylan finally turned from the window. The single pod they'd selected sat in the center of the medical bay, surrounded by Caldari scientists and armed guards. Inside the transparent shell, a human woman floated in suspended animation, her features peaceful despite 8 centuries of frozen dreams. Her dark hair drifted around her face like seaweed in deep water. "Begin the revival sequence," Raylan commanded. The medical team exchanged nervous glances, but they obeyed. Warm fluid began pumping into the pod, replacing the cryogenic gel. Monitors tracked the human's vital signs as her body slowly returned to life. Heart rate increasing, brain activity spiking, temperature rising toward normal. The process took 40 minutes, and Raylan watched every second with hungry fascination. When Ivy Cross's eyes finally opened, they were the color of Earth's ancient oceans. She gasped, drawing her first breath in 800 years, and her hands pressed against the inside of the pod. The medical team rushed forward to help her out, supporting her weight as she stumbled on unsteady legs. "Where?" she began, then coughed. Her voice was rough from disuse. "Where am I? How long?" "You're safe," Raylan said, stepping forward with what he hoped was a reassuring smile. "You've been asleep for a long time. My name is Administrator Raylan of the Caldari Dominion. We've revived you to help us understand your people's technology." Ivy's eyes focused on him, and Raylan felt a chill that had nothing to do with the frozen moon outside. Those eyes held an intelligence that seemed to see right through him. She looked around the medical bay, taking in the Caldari equipment, the alien faces, the guards with their weapons. "How long?" she repeated, her voice stronger now. 800 years, Raylan admitted. For a moment, Ivy just stared at him. Then she laughed, a sound that held no humor whatsoever. 800 years, my crew, my family, everyone I knew." "All gone," Raylan said. He tried to sound sympathetic, but his excitement leaked through. "You're the last human we've found. Your species' facilities are scattered across our territory, but we've never attempted a revival before. You're unique, priceless." Something shifted in Ivy's expression. The shock faded, replaced by a calculating coldness that reminded Raylan uncomfortably of the council elders he despised. She stood straighter, testing her muscles, and when she spoke again, her voice carried absolute authority. I need to contact the other facilities, she said. If I've been asleep for 800 years, the long sleep protocol should be ending. There are others, thousands of others across multiple systems. I'm afraid that won't be possible, Raylan said smoothly. You're under Caldari protection now. We need to understand your technology before we can allow you access to communication systems. Security concerns, you understand. Ivy's smile was thin and dangerous. Security concerns? Yes, I understand perfectly. The guards escorted her to prepared quarters, comfortable but clearly a prison. Raylan watched her go, feeling triumphant. He'd done it. He'd awakened a human and gained access to knowledge that would make him the most powerful leader in Caldari history. The Council would have to acknowledge his genius. What Raylan didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that the moment Ivy's heart started beating again, a signal went out. Deep in her brainstem, a neural implant that had survived 800 years of frozen sleep activated automatically. It was standard equipment for all long sleep protocol participants, designed to connect with others of its kind. The signal was weak, barely a whisper across the quantum bands, but it carried a simple message. One human was awake. Across 13 star systems, in forgotten facilities and abandoned stations, other implants received that whisper. They began sending their own signals, creating a web of quantum-entangled communication that the Caldari couldn't detect with their primitive sensors. Ancient systems recognized the pattern and responded. Cryogenic pods initiated their own wake-up sequences. Defense satellites powered up their fusion cores. Warships that had drifted dormant in deep space suddenly had purposes again. In her cell, Ivy Cross sat on the edge of her bed and closed her eyes. Through her implant, she felt the network growing. She felt other minds beginning to wake. She counted them, 12, 30, 50, the number kept climbing. She opened her eyes and smiled. Raylan thought he'd captured a prize. Instead, he'd triggered a cascade he couldn't possibly stop. The old Caldari warnings hadn't been mythology after all. They'd been the desperate wisdom of survivors who'd learned one terrible truth. Never wake the humans. Ivy whispered to the empty room, knowing her words would reach others through the quantum link. They're waking up. On a derelict warship called Testament, floating in the Andros Nebula, Admiral Grace Park took her first breath in 8 centuries. Around her, her crew was waking too. The ship's AI, Oracle, welcomed them back with quiet efficiency. Admiral Oracle said, its voice unchanged by the passage of time. We have a situation. Grace Park's fingers remembered how to grip a command console before her conscious mind fully understood she was awake. Muscle memory from 40 years of military service kicked in while her brain was still processing the impossible fact that she'd lost 800 years. Around her, the Testament's bridge came alive with displays and holographic readouts, systems that had waited patiently through centuries of silence. Report, she said, her voice rough but steady. Oracle's avatar materialized beside her, a simple geometric pattern that pulsed with each word. You've been in stasis for 812 years. The long sleep protocol ended successfully. All crew members are reviving without complications. However, we have detected unauthorized activity across human space. Grace pulled herself to her feet, ignoring the weakness in her legs. Through the bridge's main viewport, the Andros Nebula spread out like a painting done in purple and gold. The Testament had been hiding here when the protocol began, waiting for the cosmic radiation that threatened Earth to pass. Define unauthorized activity, Grace commanded. Non-human entities have occupied 47 human star systems. They call themselves the Caldari Dominion. One of our people, Dr. Ivy Cross, was forcibly awakened 3 hours ago. She's being held against her will on Frost Haven. Grace felt ice settle in her stomach, not fear exactly. She'd commanded warships through 3 different conflicts before the long sleep. Fear was something she'd learned to use as a tool. This was something colder, something that came from realizing the galaxy had moved on without humanity. How many humans are awake? Grace asked. 63 and rising, Oracle replied. The quantum network is expanding. Dr. Cross triggered the cascade when she woke. I estimate 4,000 individuals will be conscious within 24 hours. Around the bridge, Grace's crew stumbled to their stations. Lieutenant Sam Rivers, her tactical officer, looked exactly as he had the day they went asleep. Young, eager, brilliant with weapons systems, he caught Grace's eye and nodded. Whatever was coming, they'd face it together. "Get me a secure channel to everyone who's awake," Grace ordered, "and show me what these Caldari have done with our territory." The holographic display shifted, showing star charts that made Grace's heart sink. Every colony world humanity had built, every station, every outpost, all of them showed Caldari. Ownership markers, population centers with billions of aliens living in cities built on human foundations. It wasn't an invasion, it was a complete replacement. The quantum channel opened, and faces appeared in floating windows around her. Dr. Ivy Cross, looking angry and determined in what appeared to be a cell. Dr. Liam Foster at a research station, surrounded by confused Caldari scientists. Sergeant Yuki Tanaka and her Marine unit, who'd apparently already broken free and secured their facility. Dozens of others, all trying to understand what had happened to their civilization. "This is Admiral Grace Park of the Earth Defense Force Vessel Testament," Grace said, her voice carrying the authority of her rank. "I know you're all confused and probably terrified. I need you to listen carefully. We are not alone. We are not powerless. And we are going to handle this situation the way humans always have, by staying calm and working together." Ivy spoke first. "Admiral, I'm being held prisoner. The Caldari administrator who woke me, Raylan, thinks I'm the last human alive. He's planning to use me to access our technology." "He made a critical mistake," Grace replied. "He doesn't understand the long sleep protocol. Ivy, when you woke up, what happened?" Ivy's eyes widened with understanding. "My neural implant activated automatically. It sent out a signal." "Which woke the rest of us," Grace finished. "The protocol was designed to ensure humanity survived as a species, not as individuals. One person waking triggers everyone else. It's a failsafe against exactly this scenario." Dr. Foster leaned forward in his display window. "Admiral, I've accessed the local networks here. The Caldari have extensive historical records about humans. According to their archives, they encountered our people 1,200 years ago. That contact ended badly. 3 Caldari colony worlds were destroyed. They made a law after that: never disturb the sleeping humans." Sergeant Tanaka's scarred face showed a grim smile. "Looks like someone broke that law." "The administrator, Raylan, overrode his council's objections," Ivy confirmed. "They tried to stop him. He ignored them." Grace processed this information while Oracle fed her data about Caldari military capabilities. Their ships were decent, but 800 years behind human technology. Their weapons relied on plasma and kinetic systems that the Testament's shields could handle with ease. Their tactics showed no experience fighting opponents who could match their strength. "Here's what we're going to do," Grace announced. "Everyone currently in Caldari custody will cooperate for now. Don't antagonize your captors. Don't reveal what you know. Just observe and report. Those of you who are free, secure your facilities and inventory what resources we have. Dr. Foster, I need you to map the quantum network. Find out how many of our ships and stations are still functional." "Admiral," Lieutenant Rivers said quietly, "we could end this quickly. The Testament alone could disable their entire fleet." Grace shook her head. "We're not going to start a war, Sam. These Caldari didn't choose to occupy our space. They've been living here for generations. Their children were born in cities built on our foundations. This isn't an invasion we need to repel. It's a complicated situation we need to resolve." "With respect, Admiral," Tanaka said, "they imprisoned Ivy. They've claimed our territory. At what point do we stop being diplomatic?" "When diplomacy fails," Grace replied. "But we try it first. Oracle, open a channel to the Caldari leadership, all frequencies. I want everyone to hear this." The AI worked quickly, hijacking every communication system in Caldari space. Grace's face appeared on billions of screens, in command centers and living rooms on ships and stations. She didn't threaten. She simply stated facts. My name is Admiral Grace Park. I represent the human species, which has just awakened from 800 years of stasis. We know you've occupied our former territory. We know some of you are holding our people against their will. You have 72 hours to release all humans and prepare for negotiations about how we're going to share this space going forward. This is not a threat. This is a statement of intent. We would prefer to resolve this peacefully. The choice is yours. She ended the transmission and turned to her crew. Now we wait and see if they're smart enough to negotiate. On Frosthaven, Administrator Raylan watched the transmission with growing horror. Around him, his council sat in stunned silence. Elder Osrin, the oldest among them, finally spoke. You've destroyed us all. Raylan's hands shook. One ship, she mentioned one ship. We have 200 warships. We can overwhelm them. You don't understand, Osrin said, his voice heavy with ancient fear. Our ancestors left us the warning. For a reason, humans don't fight like we do. They don't conquer, they endure. And that makes them unstoppable. Raylan stood abruptly. I won't surrender our empire to sleeping relics. Mobilize the fleet. We'll destroy this testament and show these humans what real power looks like. The council erupted in protests, but Raylan had already made his decision. Pride and fear had poisoned his judgment. He'd awakened humanity thinking he'd control them. Now he'd prove to everyone that the old warnings were just superstitious nonsense. He had no idea how badly he'd miscalculated. In her cell, Ivy felt the quantum network pulse with new activity. Thousands of humans were waking now. Ancient systems were coming online. The galaxy was about to remember why the first Caldari had been so terrified. She smiled. Raylan wanted power. He was about to learn that humanity's greatest strength had never been their weapons. It was their refusal to give up. The Caldari battle fleet emerged from hyperspace like a swarm of angry insects. 200 warships arranged in attack formations that had won them a dozen territorial wars. Raylan stood on the bridge of the Eternal Glory, his flagship, watching the tactical displays with grim satisfaction. The testament appeared on their sensors as a single red dot, alone and vulnerable in the vast darkness of the Andros Nebula. All ships report ready, his tactical officer announced. Weapons charged, shields at maximum. We have overwhelming numerical superiority. Transmit our demands, Raylan ordered. The human vessel will surrender immediately or be destroyed. On the Testament's bridge, Admiral Park studied the Caldari fleet with the calm expression of someone who'd seen this exact scenario play out before. Lieutenant Rivers had weapons ready, but Grace had ordered him to hold fire. She wanted to give the Caldari one last chance to reconsider their mistake. Admiral incoming transmission, Oracle announced. Raylan's face appeared on the main display, his features twisted with desperation poorly disguised as authority. Human vessel testament, you are surrounded and outgunned. Surrender your ship and all human personnel will be treated as prisoners of war. Refuse and we will open fire. Grace leaned back in her command chair. Administrator Raylan, you had 72 hours to make a choice. You chose violence in less than 3. That tells me everything I need to know about your character. You're not a leader. You're a frightened child with access to weapons you don't understand. Raylan's face flushed with rage. I understand enough. You're alone. We are many. That's all the understanding required. Tell me something, Grace said quietly. Why did your ancestors make that law, the one about never waking humans? Did you ever wonder what they saw that scared them so badly? For just a moment, doubt flickered across Raylan's features. Then pride reasserted itself. Superstition and fear, nothing more. Our ancestors were primitive. We've evolved beyond their weakness. Grace smiled, and there was something sad in that expression. No, you haven't. You've just forgotten the lessons they learned. Oracles show them what they're facing. The Testament's external lights blazed to life, illuminating the massive warship in the nebula's glow. The Caldari fleet's sensors suddenly registered the ship's true dimensions and capabilities. What they'd thought was a standard cruiser was actually a Titan-class dreadnought. 3 kilometers long and bristling with weapons systems that predated their entire civilization. "Last chance," Grace said. "Withdraw your fleet and we'll talk. Continue this attack and I'll show you exactly why your ancestors were terrified." Raylan's response was to open fire. 200 Caldari warships unleashed everything they had. Plasma cannons superheated the surrounding space. Kinetic missiles screamed toward their target at fractions of light speed. Particle beams converged on the Testament from multiple angles. It was enough firepower to crack a small moon. The Testament's shields absorbed it all without even flickering. "Shields at 97%, Lieutenant Rivers reported, his voice professionally calm. "No damage to hull or systems. Caldari weapons are ineffective." Grace had hoped it wouldn't come to this. She'd really wanted to resolve things peacefully. But Raylan had made his choice, and now she had to show him the consequences. "Return fire, precision strikes only, disable their weapons and engines. I want casualties at 0 if possible." The Testament's railguns spoke with voices like thunder. Each shot traveled at 15% of light speed, accelerated by magnetic fields that could bend space itself. The tungsten rounds punched through Caldari shields as if they didn't exist. In the first 5 seconds, 60 warships went dark, their weapons destroyed and engines crippled. The Testament's targeting AI calculated trajectories with inhuman precision, hitting weak points that left crews alive but ships helpless. "They're trying to regroup," Rivers reported, "forming defensive formations." "Adjust targeting," Grace ordered. "Show them defensive formations don't matter." The Testament fired again, and this time the shots curved around obstacles using gravitational manipulation. The rounds found their targets despite evasive maneuvers. Another 40 ships went dead in space. The Caldari fleet's perfect formations dissolved into chaos as captains realized their tactics meant nothing against technology they couldn't comprehend. "Admiral, the flagship is hailing us," Oracle announced. Raylan's face reappeared, but the arrogance was gone. "Cease fire, we surrender, please just stop." Grace considered letting him suffer a bit longer, then dismissed the petty impulse. "All ships hold fire. Oracle, disable the remaining vessels, non-lethal force only." The Testament's gravitational projectors activated, creating invisible walls of warped space around each Caldari ship. The vessels couldn't move, couldn't maneuver, couldn't do anything except float helplessly. In less than 2 minutes, an entire battle fleet had been neutralized without a single death. "Now," Grace said, her voice carrying across every Caldari frequency, "let me explain something. The Testament is one ship. We have 47 more like her scattered across what used to be human space. Most of them are bigger. Some have weapons that make our railguns look primitive. You attacked us with your entire fleet and couldn't even scratch our shields." She paused to let that sink in. "But here's what matters. We disabled your ships instead of destroying them. We could have killed everyone. It would have been easy. We chose not to. Do you understand why?" Silence from the Caldari fleet. Grace continued. "Because we're not conquerors, we're survivors. We spent 800 years asleep trusting that the future would be better. We didn't sleep to wake up and start killing people. We slept to preserve what humanity stands for, the belief that cooperation beats domination every single time." "What do you want from us?" a new voice asked. Elder Osrin had taken control from the disgraced Raylan. "I want you to release all humans currently in your custody," Grace replied. "I want you to acknowledge that this territory was ours before it was yours, and then I want to negotiate a real solution, one where both our species can coexist without anyone getting hurt. Can you do that?" "We can," Osrin said, his voice heavy with relief. "Administrator Raylan will be removed from power. The Council will take control. We accept your terms." Grace nodded. "Good. You have 48 hours to comply. Oracle, release their ships. Let them go home." The gravitational fields dissolved. The Caldari fleet slowly gathered itself and retreated, leaving behind their damaged vessels for recovery crews. On the Eternal Glory, Raylan was placed under arrest by his own officers. His grab for power had lasted less than a day. As the fleet disappeared into hyperspace, Lieutenant Rivers turned to Grace. "Admiral, that was almost too easy. What if they regroup and try again?" "They won't," Grace said confidently. "We just taught them the most important lesson. We're stronger than they are, and we chose mercy anyway. That's more terrifying than any weapon. Because now they have to wonder what kind of species has that much power and that much restraint." Across human space, other awakened humans watched recordings of the battle. They saw Admiral Park's tactics, her precision, her refusal to cause unnecessary harm. Some disagreed with her approach. Sergeant Tanaka sent a message suggesting they should have pressed their advantage. But most understood what Grace was doing. She was setting the tone for humanity's return. They weren't coming back as conquerors. They were coming back as the people they'd always been. Survivors who believed the galaxy could be better. On Frost Haven, Ivy walked out of her cell as Caldari guards stepped aside. Raylan's authority had evaporated the moment his fleet retreated. She made her way to the communications center and opened a channel to Grace. "Well played, Admiral," Ivy said. "The hard part comes next," Grace replied. "Winning a battle is easy. Building peace is where it gets complicated. Are you ready for that?" Ivy looked out at the frozen moon where she'd spent 800 years sleeping. Somewhere out there, Earth was waiting. Humanity's homeworld, restored after centuries of radiation. A whole civilization to rebuild. A relationship with the Caldari to forge. Countless challenges ahead. She smiled, always have been. 3 months after the battle, Ivy stood in what had once been a human agricultural station, and was now home to 4,000 Caldari families. Children played in parks built over hydroponic gardens that humanity had installed 900 years ago. The sight made her chest ache with complicated emotions. These people hadn't stolen anything. They'd simply been born here in a galaxy where humans were ancient history. "Dr. Cross, the Joint Council is ready for you," a young Caldari assistant said. His name was Torin, the same one who'd helped Raylan wake her. He'd apologized at least 50 times. Ivy had forgiven him on the second apology. The council chamber was a converted cargo bay, deliberately chosen to be neutral territory. Admiral Park sat on one side with human representatives. Elder Osrin led the Caldari delegation opposite her. Between them, holographic displays showed proposed territorial divisions, resource sharing agreements, and cultural exchange programs. "We've made good progress," Osrin said as Ivy took her seat. "The Caldari Council accepts the partition plan. Humans reclaim your core systems, we retain the outer colonies where our populations are established. Open borders for both species. Mutual defense pact against external threats." "It's more than fair," Grace replied. "You're keeping more territory than we expected, but we need to address the elephant in the room, trust. How do we build it when 3 months ago we were shooting at each other?" Ivy raised her hand. "I have a proposal, joint research stations, Caldari biotechnology combined with human engineering. We each have strengths. Let's use them together instead of separately." A Caldari scientist named Myra leaned forward. "What kind of research?" "Everything," Ivy said. "Medicine, environmental restoration, propulsion systems, agriculture. The Caldari have mastered ecological balance in ways we never did. You can grow crops on barren moons. We have persistence, adaptability, and stubborn refusal to accept limitations. Together, we could terraform worlds." Myra's eyes lit up. "I've studied your species' approach to problem solving. It's fascinating. Where we see permanent obstacles, you see temporary setbacks. That mindset could revolutionize our work." "Then let's do it," Grace said. "Start with 3 joint facilities, one for medical research, one for engineering, one for environmental science. Staff them with volunteers from both species. See what happens when we actually work together." The council agreed unanimously. It was the first major collaborative decision, and everyone felt the weight of its significance. They were choosing cooperation over suspicion. It felt fragile, like glass that could shatter with one wrong move. That wrong move came 2 weeks later. Raylan had been exiled to a remote asteroid mining station, stripped of all authority. But he'd taken 30 loyal followers with him, and over the months they'd stolen ships, weapons, and enough supplies to outfit a small insurgent force. His first attack hit a mixed colony called New Harmony, where human and Caldari families had started building lives together. The raid killed 40 civilians before Raylan's ships retreated. Among the dead were both species, children who'd been playing together that morning. The attack was designed to destroy trust, to prove that cooperation was impossible. Ivy received the news while working at the first joint research station. She felt rage burn through her, hot and clean. Beside her, Myra was crying. The Caldari scientist had lost a cousin in the attack. "He's trying to start the war again," Myra said through tears. "He wants us to blame each other." "Then we don't give him what he wants," Ivy replied. "We hunt him down together." Admiral Park agreed. Within hours, a joint military task force assembled. Human warships and Caldari vessels working from a unified command structure for the first time. Grace put Sergeant Tanaka in charge of ground operations. The Caldari appointed Commander Vashan, a veteran who'd fought in their territorial wars. The two met in the Testament's briefing room. Tanaka was stocky and scarred, her black hair cut military short. Vashan was tall and thin, his silver markings indicating 30 years of service. They studied each other warily. "I won't pretend this isn't strange," Tanaka said. 3 months ago I was ready to fight your entire species. Now we're supposed to be partners." "My people have a saying," Vashan replied. "The enemy you know can become the ally you trust. We learn or we die. I choose to learn." Tanaka nodded slowly. "Fair enough, let's talk tactics. Raylan has 30 ships and maybe 500 fighters. He's using hit-and-run strategies, targeting soft civilian sites. How do we stop him?" "We predict his next target," Vashan said. "He's hitting mixed colonies, places where our species are integrating. There are 12 such settlements. We position forces at each one." "That spreads us too thin," Tanaka countered. "He'll just wait until we pull back." They argued for 2 hours, each bringing their species' tactical doctrines to the discussion. Gradually, something unexpected happened. They started combining approaches. Caldari predictive algorithms merged with human adaptive strategy. The result was better than either could have achieved alone. "We set a trap," Tanaka finally said. "We announce a new colony, big public ceremony, maximum integration on display. Raylan won't be able to resist. When he attacks, we hit him from 3 sides." Vashan smiled. "Using his hatred against him, I like it." The trap worked perfectly. Raylan's forces attacked the announced colony site, only to find it was a decoy. Hidden human and Caldari ships surrounded them. Tanaka's Marines and Vashan's commandos boarded Raylan's flagship together, moving through corridors with coordinated precision. They found Raylan in his command center, desperately trying to activate self-destruct systems. "You can't stop this," he screamed. "Humans and Caldari will never truly cooperate. It's against nature. We're too different." Vashan stepped forward. "You're wrong. I've spent 3 weeks working with Sergeant Tanaka. She taught me things about tactical flexibility I never imagined. I showed her approaches to resource management that surprised her. We're better together than separate. That terrifies you because it makes everything you believe obsolete." "We don't have to be enemies," Tanaka added. "But you've killed innocent people, both human and Caldari. That makes you everyone's enemy." Raylan lunged for a weapon. Vashan disarmed him with techniques Tanaka had taught him the previous week. It was a small moment, almost trivial, but everyone watching understood its significance. The two species were learning from each other, becoming stronger through cooperation. Raylan was taken into custody. His followers surrendered when they saw their leader captured. The joint task force returned to New Harmony to help rebuild. Human engineers and Caldari ecological specialists worked side by side, repairing damage and improving defenses. Ivy attended the memorial service for the attack victims. Humans and Caldari mourned together, sharing grief in a way that transcended species. A young Kaldari girl named Leora, who'd lost her parents, stood beside a human boy named David who'd lost his father. They held hands while the names were read. After the service, Grace pulled Ivy aside. "It's working," she said quietly. "The integration, 3 months ago I didn't think it was possible. Now I'm watching children from two species comfort each other. How did this happen so fast?" "It's not fast," Ivy replied. "Humans spent 100,000 years learning that cooperation beats competition. We evolved to work together because isolation meant death. The Kaldari built their empire through similar principles, just on a smaller scale. We're not that different. We just needed a reason to try." "And Raylan gave us that reason," Grace said. "By trying to destroy trust, he forced us to prove it was real." Ivy watched Leora and David walk away together. "The hard part isn't over. Building peace is a constant process, but I think we're going to make it." She was right. Over the following months, integration accelerated. Joint colonies flourished. Mixed crews explored new systems. Human persistence and Kaldari ecological wisdom created thriving worlds where both had failed separately. The galaxy was watching. Other species saw what cooperation could achieve. They started asking questions about joining the alliance. Humanity had returned not as conquerors, but as partners, and that was more revolutionary than any weapon. 2 years after the awakening, the Academy of Two Worlds orbited peacefully between Earth and Caldera Prime, serving as a symbol of everything humanity, and the Kaldari had built together. Ivy walked through its corridors watching students from both species collaborate on projects that would have been impossible for either alone. A human teenager helped her Kaldari classmate understand calculus. Two Kaldari boys argued with a human girl about the best way to design atmospheric processors. It was chaotic, loud, and beautiful. "Dr. Cross, you have a visitor," the Academy's AI announced. Ivy found Admiral Park waiting in her office, looking tired but satisfied. Grace had spent the last year overseeing the integration of human and Kaldari military forces. It was exhausting work, but the results spoke for themselves. The joint fleet had explored 30 new star systems and made peaceful contact with 4 previously unknown species. "I have news," Grace said. "The Council and our human leadership have made a decision about Raylan. His sentence is complete. He's being released from exile." Ivy felt her stomach tighten. After what he did, after the people he killed. "He served 2 years in isolation, cataloging archaeological data," Grace replied. "The joint court determined he's no longer a threat. More importantly, keeping him imprisoned doesn't serve any purpose except revenge. We're trying to build something better than that." Ivy wanted to argue, but she understood the logic. The new alliance couldn't be built on endless punishment. At some point, they had to choose forgiveness over retribution. Where will he go? "He's requested permission to live on Frost Haven," Grace said. "The place where this all started. He wants to study the long sleep facilities, understand what he missed about humanity." I told him yes. 3 months later, Ivy returned to Frost Haven for the first time since her awakening. The frozen moon had changed. The cryogenic facilities were now a museum, carefully preserved to show future generations what humanity had sacrificed to survive. Kaldari and human visitors walked through the halls, reading about the long sleep protocol and the 800-year gamble that had paid off. She found Raylan in the archives, surrounded by holographic displays showing human history. He'd aged in just 2 years, stress and regret carving lines into his face. When he saw Ivy, he stood quickly. "Dr. Cross, I didn't expect to see you here." "I came to see what you're doing with your second chance," Ivy replied. Raylan gestured at his research. "I'm trying to understand. When I woke you, I thought humans were tools, resources to exploit. I didn't see people. I saw power I could claim. The Council tried to warn me, but I was so certain I knew better." "And now," Ivy asked. "Now I spend my days reading about human history, about the disasters you survived, the extinctions you avoided, the countless times you could have given up but didn't." He pulled up a display showing Earth's ice ages. "Your species faced annihilation dozens of times. You kept going, you adapted, you survived. I thought that made you weak. I was catastrophically wrong. Ivy studied him carefully. What changed your mind? Watching the integration succeed, Raylan admitted. I was so sure humans and Caldari couldn't coexist peacefully. I believed conflict was inevitable. But I've seen the joint colonies. I've read reports about mixed crews exploring together. I've watched children from both species become friends. He met her eyes. I tried to start a war. Instead, I created the conditions for the most successful partnership in galactic history. My failure accomplished more than my ambitions ever could have. That's a painful realization, Ivy said. I deserve the pain, Raylan replied quietly. 40 people died because of my choices. I can't undo that. All I can do is make sure future generations understand why cooperation beats domination. That's my life's work now, teaching people not to make my mistakes. Ivy left him to his research, feeling strange and conflicted. She'd hated Raylan for so long. Seeing him genuinely trying to change was disorienting. But wasn't that the point? Wasn't the whole alliance built on the idea that people could grow beyond their worst impulses? She contacted Grace. I saw Raylan. I think he's actually learned something. Good, Grace replied, because we're going to need everyone's best effort for what comes next. What comes next? Ivy asked. 4 neighboring species have formally requested to join the alliance, Grace explained. They've seen what humans and Caldari built together. They want to be part of it. We're not just an alliance anymore, Ivy. We're becoming the foundation of something bigger, a galactic community based on cooperation instead of competition. 6 months later, the Treaty of Frost Haven was signed by representatives from 6 different species. Humans, Caldari, and 4 newcomers who'd seen the success of integration and wanted to replicate it. The signing ceremony took place in the same chamber where Ivy had first awakened, a deliberate choice to remind everyone how this started. Admiral Park gave the opening speech. 2 years ago, one person made a terrible mistake. He woke humanity expecting to find weapons and power. Instead, he found people who'd spent 800 years trusting the future would be better. That trust wasn't misplaced. Look around this room. 6 species, formerly strangers or rivals, now partners. This didn't happen because any of us are perfect. It happened because we chose cooperation over conflict. Elder Osrin spoke next. The Caldari made a law, never wake the humans. We thought it would protect us. But laws based on fear never lead anywhere good. The new law should be, always choose understanding over assumptions. Always choose partnership over domination. Always remember that strength without wisdom leads to ruin. Ivy found herself called to the podium unexpectedly. She looked out at the assembled representatives and thought about everything that had led to this moment. When I woke up, I was terrified. My world was gone. Everyone I knew was dust. The galaxy had moved on without humanity, but I was wrong to be afraid. The galaxy hadn't moved on. It had been waiting for someone to show that cooperation wasn't weakness, waiting for proof that different species could build something together. She paused, choosing her words carefully. Humans survived by working together. We evolved to cooperate because isolation meant death. Every species here has similar stories. You all faced challenges that required collective effort. That's not a human trait. It's a universal truth. Together, we're stronger than apart. That's not philosophy. It's physics. It's biology. It's the fundamental law of civilization. The treaty was signed. Celebrations erupted across 6 homeworlds. But the real work was just beginning. Joint colonies needed planning. Shared technology required careful integration. Cultural differences had to be navigated with sensitivity and patience. 10 years later, Ivy stood in the same spot where she'd awakened. The facility was now the center of the Alliance Academy, training diplomats and scientists from dozens of species. She taught xenobiology to students who represented 20 different evolutionary paths. Her classroom was chaos in the best way, filled with questions and debates and brilliant young minds learning to work together. Admiral Park, now retired, visited often. They'd become close friends, bonded by the shared experience of waking to an impossible situation and somehow making it work. They stood together watching the sunset over Frost Haven's icy plains. "Do you ever regret it?" Grace asked. "The long sleep, losing 800 years." Ivy considered the question. "I regret the people I lost, my family, my friends, my old life, but if staying awake meant missing this." She gestured at the academy, at the diverse students, at the ships from multiple species docked at the station. "No, I don't regret it. We went to sleep trusting humanity would survive. We woke up and found something better. We found partners." Grace smiled. The old Caldari law was wrong. The real rule should have been, always wake the humans, they might surprise you. Across the galaxy, the alliance continued to grow. New species joined, old conflicts dissolved. Humanity's gift wasn't superior weapons or advanced technology. It was the simple demonstration that cooperation worked, that different species could build something greater than any could achieve alone. Raylan, still working in the archives, compiled a history of the awakening. His book became required reading at the academy. Its conclusion was simple. "I broke the rule, I woke the humans, I expected power, I found wisdom, my empire is gone, what replaced it is better. Let that be the lesson. Fear divides us, trust unites us. Choose wisely." The galaxy was learning, and humanity, after 800 years of sleep, was finally home.